The reason you feel empty despite being successful is because they're two totally different things. Stop comparing things that are not the same. It's like saying, why am I bad at chess when I'm good at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? That's what that kind of question is. Now, it's an important question. I understand why people are asking it, but this will fundamentally change how you think about it. Because in some ways, if you want to take the chess and the BJJ example, they both increase mental capacity. They both teach you how to deal with stress. They both teach you how to perform when you're under stress. They both have a lot of similarities about them, but they're two fundamentally different things. Success, at least in the way that we in the Western world talk about it, often has to do with the external. It has to do with, do we have a nice car? Have we got a family? Have we got a loving partner? Have we got a good job? Have we got a good family? All of this stuff is external, and that stuff is great. And there's actually not too much of a divide between the external and internal. For me, in my practice, I'm actually seeing how both of those things are the same thing, and the boundary between them is artificial. Now, you don't have to get to that place. And what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that all of that is outward facing. It's projecting outward, rather than the emptiness is something, it's a feeling that we're creating from the inside. Okay? So a client that I have is a software engineer, very ambitious, successful, always trying to, has been in the self-development place and the self-improvement space for probably about a decade now. And he's constantly thinking about the next mountain to climb. Or he was constantly thinking about the next mountain to climb. Whether that's getting a promotion, whether that's when he was dating, getting a girlfriend, it was fitness, it was all of this kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that these things are not something that you should pursue, are not something for you to go after. But what I am saying is that he was fundamentally trapped in that dopamine cycle of always chasing more, always wanting more, always moving the goalpost forward and trying to get the next thing. The breakthrough for him came when he realized that he was the one that was creating these standards for himself. And he was the one that was making these standards impossible for him to reach. Why? Because every time he reached them, they kept on changing. And what it came down to, and what so much of this question comes down to a lot of the time, is having an insecurity. Having a deep unconscious insecurity. In my client's case, it was to do with mediocrity. He never wanted to settle. He was afraid of being mediocre. He was afraid that if he stopped doing this, he would just become complacent. He wouldn't want to do anything and he would lose all of his drive. But what that meant was, because this was the strategy that he employed, because that goalpost kept moving, because he wasn't giving himself time to celebrate, because he wasn't allowing himself time to rest, he was constantly staying on that hamster wheel. So the goals were empty. The whole reason that he was going after these things was because he wanted to achieve his goals. But then once he reached the goal, he didn't give himself any time to celebrate and he just moved on to the next thing. So he was making the journey empty for himself. He was making the goals empty. He was making his success empty. And his breakthrough came realizing that this fear of mediocrity, if he was to give that back and let it go because it was an introjection, then it wouldn't just make him mediocre. He was able to motivate himself from a much deeper place of inspiration, of love, which is a much softer, but a much stronger and more powerful energy long term. And this is relatable to a lot of my clients and a lot in my own journey as well. And it's probably relatable to you listening to this right now. How we got to this breakthrough, and this is something that you can play around with right now, is we need to recognize the positive intention of whatever fear of mediocrity, whatever fear of not being successful, of not going after our goals. We need to recognize the positive intention behind that. For this, it was super easy. It made him more productive. It made him achieve a lot in his life. It made him successful compared to a lot of people in his age group. It made him realize all of this stuff. And once you can see the positive intention, you stop demonizing what's going on inside of you. When you stop demonizing what's going on inside of you, it makes change much, much easier. If you want more detail on how to actually rewire your unconscious beliefs, then I have my free practical shadow work guide in the link below. It's a live stream with my one-on-one clients, 2.5 hours. If this is an area of your life that you're serious about, downloading that and doing that will change your life completely. I'll also send you a follow-up email. We can go back and forth in the emails. Make sure you're getting everything you need. Maybe even give you a little bit of bespoke one-on-one coaching via that email. Make sure that when you're investigating this for yourself, when you're relating yourself to my client's journey, when you're relating yourself to my journey that I've talked about here, you're using playful, creative energy. You're not using critical, analytical mind. It's the critical and the analytical mind which is amazing at keeping the status quo. The problem is if you're being very successful but you're feeling quite empty, then that status quo is not working. You need to think outside the box, and in order to do real unconscious work, you need to have a playful, creative, curious energy. Most likely, if you're experiencing this problem, you've been holding yourself out of fear. That's perfectly okay. Fear gives us the opportunity to step into courage, be bold, take action, do something different. If you're afraid of being mediocre, I totally understand. And if you're afraid of letting go of that fear of mediocrity because it's what served you so well and it's what enabled you to become successful, I understand that too. I'm saying that we don't have to forget about that. If you genuinely try what I did with my client and letting go of the fear of mediocrity really does make you lazy, then you can always go back to it, right? You can always go back to that fear. That fear isn't going anywhere. What I'm saying right now is what got you to where you are now is not going to get you the rest of the way. There has to be something deeper. There has to be a change. There has to be a rewiring that comes from confronting our fears and taking a leap of faith.